And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 331. We are here on New Year's Eve. So most of you probably listen to this 2021. Hopefully it's a better time for you all. That'd be great. Before we get into the brass tacks of all this, you can follow me on Twitter at BDintric. Give a rate and review to the podcast. Be much appreciated. And that'll be the last of my sales pitches today because I have a great guest lined up for us. We're going to do some New Year's resolutions, talk some occasional hot stove information going on, and we're going to talk about value. And I value this guy's opinion. You can find him on Twitter at Deadpool Hitter. He has the Deadpool Hitter podcast. Mr. Rob DiPietro, how we doing, man?
I'm doing wonderful, Bubba. I really appreciate you having me out here today. It's pretty wild feeling. Last year about this time I started the whole getting into deep, heavy podcast listening, and had a vision for what I wanted to mine to sound like, and I just started listening to everything. And yours instantly became like one of the go-tos, and it's so wild that I'm here talking to you. So it's pretty cool. It's full circle, but it's awesome. I appreciate all you do, man. You're grinding out there every day. It's awesome. It's great to see. It's big motivation for everybody.
Well, I appreciate it. And I want to apologize. It's the Pull Hitter podcast. I always call it Deadpool Hitter in my head because you're the Deadpool Hitter. It's the Pull Hitter podcast if you're looking for it on iTunes. I've done it many times. So it's the Pull Hitter podcast. Right. And I should get it right because I've been lucky enough to be on the show with my other co-host, Toby. That was crazy. And that was a fun one, talking about different stuff there and really getting into the kind of how do we look at 2020 and going into 2021 conversations like that. So that was great. Yeah, you've been doing the podcast game. I remember it was probably a little less than a year ago, pretty close to it though, when you were asking me what kind of microphones, and you're asking other guys too, not just me, but you're asking questions, getting all into it. So it's good to see. But the thing that's fun is, did you have the vision to do this before you're the $30,000 man or after the $30,000 man?
Oh, it was before. It was before. I had a pretty horrible end to 2019. It was worse than 2020. So I had a pretty just terrible time, and just pivoted, just really focused, laser focused on this stuff, and getting it out there. And it just ended up great, how it ended up me winning, and I just started this journey. Ended up, it was a lot easier for me, I guess, to link up with the big hitters.
It helps. But, it does help.
It definitely helped. I'm definitely grateful about that. But everyone's awesome. What a great community that we're involved with. Yeah, and I remember asking you about the microphones and every little technical thing. Watching PitchCon, just learned so much. Everyone was so helpful. No one ever had a bad thing to say or didn't respond. It was really awesome to see that.
Yes, the beauty of the community. It's I've always told anybody that is new to it. My DMs are always open, for one, and B is never be scared to ask anybody. The community, no matter how big the person you think is, they're pretty receptive to talking. So that's one go-to thing I would say. But I have more to ask you, but I'm going to save that for more of our resolution section.
Cool. Yes.
It kind of lines into there, I think, about kind of your future for this year and whatnot based on last year. But so we'll go there for that. Let's jump into some recent news. The Padres have been busy, very busy. AJ Preller must have had a heck of a Santa Claus gift come under the tree and decided we're going to spend all our money, or at least most of our prospects, on some new toys this year. And we'll start with Blake Snell coming over from the Padres. I'm not going to worry too much. We got Patino and stuff. That could be an interesting situation, but there's a lot of question marks there. Blake Snell coming from Tampa Bay to San Diego. Everyone's talking about more innings. That's the go-to conversation, but I think there's a lot more to it. What's your take on Snell coming to San Diego, and how does that affect his fantasy value for you?
Well, Snell, it's funny because I think he's one of those types of pitchers where if you're going into a draft and you like to get maybe 3 out of your top 5 picks, I think he's a perfect 3, but also an acceptable 2. When I say perfect 3, I think it's if you can hit on some good pocket aces and then have the best of Snell, I think you're on your way to a main event type of win. And I think the move to the park is kind of lateral. But I think if we get the geographical kind of effect that we had last year, he might benefit a little from, facing weaker West team versus I think the teams that he faced in the AL and NL East. We hear the term risk with him, and yes, it is risky. Definitely going to acknowledge there's a risk there, but I think the injury label is a tad over exaggerated. I think, 2018, he missed 12 days. It was his Cy Young year. He came back firing, didn't bother him until a full year after that. He had that fractured toe. That's not a baseball injury. So he goes on the IL for the loose bodies, misses a bunch of games, end of the season, gets the cortisone shot. And then even with the start-stop type of year, was able to, power through. And what really impressed me, it's actually, I just pulled this up 2 days ago and I watched it, was the infamous Game 6 that he got pulled. And I did a little diving because I think a lot of the attention is to whether he should have got pulled or not, but we forget like what he did during the game. He had a 21.9% swing and strike rate. It was the second highest for him in 2020 and the only pitcher to have over 20% versus the Dodgers in 2020. So it wasn't an easy thing to do versus the Dodgers. What I also found pretty crazy was that the Dodgers swung at 15 of Snell's fastballs and came up empty on 8. And there was only one other pitcher during the regular season and postseason who got that similar type of whiff rate on fastballs. He also had a crazy 40% CSW in that game. It was in the top 2% of all starts all year long. And for reference, for context, Giolito's no-hitter was 47 CSW. So the boy had his stuff, Bubba. That's what, I don't know. I went back. I saw he was reaching 97.4. I know the 0.8 mile per hour dip that he saw in his velos in 2018, but he was in the World Series throwing gas, and he wanted to pitch. And I don't know. When I see that, and in that whole context, I look at it a little differently, and maybe he can give you a similar type season. And even if he doesn't accumulate a ton of innings, I still like what he can do in 170, 160. Better than most. I put it that way.
Yeah, no, it's a really fun debate because I know when the Game 6 took place, many people had different opinions on it. Like it's the Rays way, so we stuck with the Rays way. But it's Game 6. He's gassed up, like you said. You kind of roll with what got you there. There's just so many different arguments to be made there, and I agree he was dealing. There's no arguments there. I mentioned on a recent show that Blake Snell's press conference when the Padres introduced him, he mentioned a few times that he was looking forward to being on a new team that lets pitchers go past the 6th, and he wants to show people what he can do. And so he had little jabs going back to Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
So there's a little chip on the shoulder, and you can tell Blake's got that. And sometimes that's a great thing to have. Sometimes you can get pitchers throwing too hard, and it adds up being something bad. So that's why he's just such a conundrum about. It's like you said, he's a great number 3 if you get the elite number 3 because he is just a couple of years removed from the AL Cy Young. So we know how good he is. Like he is that good of a pitcher. So it's tricky with him. When he's with Tampa, I really didn't want to draft him at all because I believe that Tampa does their thing and they weren't going to change. Like they're just not going to. But now in San Diego, it's a lot more interesting. We'll talk about Darvish in a minute. So you have those two guys as your aces. There's injury concerns with Lamet. Paddock's been kind of wishy-washy. The rest of that rotation's kind of tough where they need Darvish and Snell to kind of lead the way and save the bullpen from time to time.
Right.
So like you're saying, you could see Snell going there. So I guess the question comes down to, if you're looking at, for the reference of the whole podcast, Draft Champions ADP, December 1st till today, the 31st. So what we're kind of be looking at. And you got Snell's the 17th pitcher off the board at pick 52. Right before him, you got Maeda and Glass now. Right after him, you have the infamous, famous Corbin Burns. And then Zach Plesac, who I know your thoughts on that, so he won't even be in the conversation here. But like between Glass now, Maeda, Snell, Burns, does Snell still stand out as the top guy kind of in this range of starting pitchers?
He is. For me, he is, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll take the steadiness of Zach Gallen, but I just think the upside would be better with Snell. And I think if I'm taking Snell, like I said, it'd probably be as a 2 or a 3. And I try to want to, be a little more of a home run pick there rather than steady Eddie Gallen.
Yeah, so, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how his ADP keeps changing now that he is in San Diego, because his high in the month's been 41. So maybe he's been kind of creeping up the last couple drafts since the move's taken place. I guess we'll have to wait and see, because I think there's a lot of validity to the conversation of who's going to throw more innings. And then obviously more counting stats. Maybe I think we can probably agree a better offense behind him that might help win more games. Like
Right.
A lot of interesting factors there. So
Right.
Snell's a fun one. And then I mentioned a second ago, Yu Darvish gets traded from San Diego along with his personal catcher, Victor Caratini. Caratini's fun in deep leagues. He's just going to catch one day every 5. Like he might fill in at first base and DH if that comes back. So he's kind of a tough one to evaluate at this point in time. But you got Darvish coming off and a runner-up Cy Young season, outstanding. About the second half of 2019 where he was elite. He seems to have figured it out right now with the pitch mix change and the metrics. Coming over to San Diego, what's your fantasy take there? Because right now he's the 5th guy off the board, which is pretty high already. And it's going to be hard to kind of jump the next group.
Pretty up there, I think this all comes down to your views on like the ageist, your view on pitchers up there in age and how you mitigate risk. If you think he's planted the flag and that he's a brand new control pitcher, which it looks like he is, I think you can be comfortable taking him. I won't take him where he's going, but I certainly wouldn't fault anyone for doing so.
Yeah, that's
the way I feel.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing because I think the transition from Chicago to San Diego, fantasy-wise, you're going to see a pretty similar pitcher. But
right.
You can't really get much higher than what he was doing. He might have a little regression, but I still think he's going to be pretty darn good. The hard part will be, he's a high pick. Like, there's a guy you mentioned in the resolution, so I won't bring him up now, but I'm 100% with you. I want that guy probably over Darvish. I talked about him on the SP1 preview with Toby the other day.
Mm-hmm.
I legit think he's got the potential to take that next jump. So we'll get to him later.
Yeah, that's the guy who I would take there too over him. So yeah.
And so that's a tease, listeners, to keep listening.
A little tease.
But it's just hard to take Darvish, who I love, but I loved him last year when he was like in round 3. It was so much more
I know. And like it's just one of those things where every time I look at it and I question myself, constantly ask myself, should I be more in, should you, and it's just tough. It's still only like a second half of 2019 into a short season 2020. And, it's an impressive run. Don't get me wrong, but it still doesn't, for me versus his whole career. And he's up there in age, but yeah, like I said, I don't fault anyone for taking him because I could totally see him, being the number 4 pitcher this year.
Yeah, it's about a 25 start stretch. So it's not like it's a good sample, but not a great sample. So that's the tricky part there. Last thing we'll talk about for the Padres for now is they're still rumored to be doing more stuff. But for now, they made a splash in the foreign market. There is an elite middle infield, probably going to play second base for the Padres, but played shortstop in the KBO. Ha-Seong Kim. Came over, signed with the Padres, about $6 to $7 million a year. That's not important here. What's important is this guy has power and speeds, depth charts projection, 244 average, 22 homers, 8 stolen bases. I know Jeff Erickson on RotoWire, he tweeted out the other day about a low 20s, like mid-teen stolen base guy, like a 270-ish average, because he hit around 300 for most of the last 4 years in the KBO with about 20-plus homers and 16 or more stolen bases. Like his 3 main years, he dominated. So it looks like a very, very good ball player, and he's still young. What does this do for you in the grand scheme of things? He's going to be shortstop eligible in the NFBC. He's like the 17th shortstop off the board, but obviously when you're drafting sometime in the season, he becomes second base eligible. What's your whole take on Kim?
Man, it's funny too because when we were doing the best ball draft, and I was like, I think I was looking for him. I forget which because there were like 3 drafts going on, and I don't. Praise to Derek and Brian Seymour. I don't know how they do 10 at a time or however much. Yeah, that's because I was like, what league do I have this guy in? Like, but it's a pretty interesting profile. So I went to just try to watch some video because I didn't see too much of it, and he had a pretty interesting swing. It looks like it could translate to some power. I don't know how much power, but he got some thunder in his bat, and he walked more than he struck out. So you don't know how that's going to translate, but that's still a good thing to see. And he doesn't seem to be sacrificing any hard contact, to be to not strike out. And he's averaging a good 20-ish, 21 homers a season. So I don't know, on video, it looks good from what the scouts say. It looks good. 12 to 15 homers, maybe 15 stolen bases. There's not too many guys who do that as is. So there's a lot of possibility. There's a lot of potential there for some profit. So whether I would take him where he's going, that's another, it's funny because I see Paul DeJong next to him. And I think one of the guys from Fangraphs had his power upside as listed as a Paul DeJong type. So whether, when we see that, it's interesting that they're next to each other. I don't know. That's a tough pick to invest so much in that market, the foreign market. I'm more risk averse to not do it in like a draft champions league. But I don't know. What do you think about him? What have you seen?
It's tough because, when the pandemic first started, I was watching some of the KBO stuff. I didn't watch it as religiously as it kept going on, but he was one of the names that I was told to pay attention to. So I'd watch him a bit, and I like the talent. There is some pop, some speed. I like the ability. One of the things I focus on in drafts I've talked about is I want to try to get guys that contribute in all 5 categories. They might not be elite in all 5, but they're contributing, and that's what Kim will do. So I like him. Roster Resource has him predicted to hit 7th, which is kind of troublesome if you go back to the whole Jeff Zimmerman's chart of where you hit in the order and how many at bats, so on as the season goes on. It adds up in a hurry, batting 7th. So that's something to keep in mind. Maybe that changes throughout the season. Maybe, who knows? But for now, 7th. I like it. I like it a lot. It's hard to take him at pick 172 because you had a key part there is the unknown of the foreign players. We've seen time and time again, Rob, that these studs from overseas come and it takes some time to figure it out, or they just don't figure it out. Because as goofy as, the Major League Baseball is, because it's so watered down with so many teams at times, it's still elite compared to any other league you go to.
Right.
And I interviewed Dan Kurtz, my KBO, way back in the pandemic before the KBO started. And I said, where would you compare, or how would you compare the MLB to KBO? And KBO, he was saying, I believe, was like in between AA and AAA.
Interesting.
So this is like basically promoting, let's say, a guy that in between seasons of AA and AAA. So let's say a AAA player. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. AAA player promoting to the bigs, and now you're saying, okay, this is my stud starting shortstop.
Interesting.
That doesn't happen every day.
Right.
So it's
a good
tough.
way to put it. Way to put it into perspective. I like that. Yeah.
So it's one of those, and there's one thing, because I'm very risk averse when I draft, and that can be a detriment to me. But I don't play a lot of overalls. Like if you're in overalls, you take some risk. I get it, but I'm more of like I'm in a standard league and I want to win this league, and so I'm more risk averse. It's one of those I got to see it. And hey, if you dominate, I'll take you as a top 10 shortstop next year.
Right.
Like I'll pay that price. But like you mentioned, Paul DeJong. I love Paul DeJong. He's boring. People hate him, but what he low average, like 250-ish average, drops bombs, like it hits in the middle of a batting order. I love that kind of profile. Jorge Polanco's right there, leading off for a good Twins lineup. You got talent there. It's just kind of how your team fills out. But
that's the thing, right? If you want to go, if you need a home run pick, like, hey, let me go swing for the fences. I built this solid, team of just, at bats all across the board, no risk. Boom, maybe you do it. I think in that circumstance, I could see myself even doing it, but I don't see I probably not. But you know what? I have I just took over a team in a dynasty league that Toby's in as well, and and I have the 1-2 and the 1-6, and I'm hoping that I can get him in that ring, with the 1-6, and in a dynasty type format, I think, because maybe he's a little bit more ready to contribute than your standard prospect that comes up. Yeah. Or I might just be able to flip him for for someone who's really into him, and which I realize the dynasty leagues are really heavy on the name value. You get a lot for name value.
Well, yeah, he's a shiny new toy. Like you can get a lot from him, especially if you're on a rebuilding dynasty. That's a great point right here. If you're on a rebuilding dynasty team and you have an early pick, you can go grab him and then flip him for like 3 or 4 pieces you can use now.
Right.
Like that's a great point you just made there that I don't think a lot of people talk about, because I don't do a lot of dynasty talk on here. I do have like 3 dynasty teams. I love the idea of it. I'm just not a prospect guru, so I try not to get too deep in the weeds of the situation. There's tons of great guys that do that. A lot better than me.
Tons. So, and I just learn from them. I just go to the site and I learn. And the one thing they preach is just to watch the video and, try to get a sense of. And sometimes, in our day, we don't want to just sit down and watch some prospects play baseball. But I try to throw it on in the background and be a little more aware of those things. Yeah.
100%. And the last thing I'll mention on Kim, because he's a fun discussion, and I'm pretty sure I'll be talking about him a lot more as we get more videos and news and all kinds of cool stuff, is the other reason I think he's going high and everyone's excited is there's a lot of prospect guys that are excited about him. So
Right.
it's one of those things like you and I who kind of focus more on the bigs, we kind of are narrow sighted on what we want to see. So then you see these guys that we just talked about that are awesome at what they do, they get excited. And so then you have a group of guys going, well, this guy said he's going to be awesome. I got to go take this guy.
Yeah. Industry
so,
bias. Yeah.
so it gets kind of fun there. And hey, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. I'll be okay being wrong this time if that's the case.
So we got a whole bunch of guys affecting the ADP market out there.
Yeah, and I guess for guys like us that probably won't be drafting them, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the Philadelphia Phillies. I just came out with my relief pitcher rankings, and somehow out of all the positions I've released, this is the last one. I've done them all. This was my most controversial one, apparently. People are up in arms about my relief pitcher rankings. I think it's funny because I prefaced it saying this thing's a wasteland. There's going to be so many moving parts because there's so many unsigned guys. A lot of teams are still looking for guys, so on and so forth. So just kind of be patient with it. Well, people either can't read or they just don't care. One of the two. But Jose Alvarado is a guy I'm a huge fan of. I'm a big fan of Jose Alvarado. What he did with the Rays a couple years ago. Then he had some family issues that weren't totally documented until after the fact. He was decent when he came back last year. He gets flipped to the Phillies, who had Hector Neris last year, which was a roller coaster ride. So now you got Alvarado there that people think will jump Neris, but for now, Neris still is on roster resource as the closer. What are you doing with Jose Alvarado come draft time? Because when you look at NFBC ADP, you got Jose. I'm not even on pitchers, so that would probably help right there. But I was still looking at shortstops. Thanks, Kim. So you got Jose Alvarado. He's going to pick 666, undrafted, unless you're in a super deep league. So what are you doing with him?
Oh my God. Like in that context, you would say I'll probably take a stab at him. Although I do think, like you mentioned, roster resource still has Neris above him. I still think that's the case. I still think he's going to get more of the save opportunities. Alvarado, that's just a good old fashioned case of, the save speculation. What's crazy, right, is that great 2018 he had, it was only 39 innings to go. That's it. It was, it was so far in years, but it was so close in innings. But there's a couple things I don't like about his profile. His ground ball rate has just, plummeted from 55 to 48 to 42. It's going in the wrong direction. He's not getting much like swinging strike wise. The biggest thing that caught my eye was how much problems he's having getting righties out, and to a point where, you just almost have to be lefty on lefty. You see, I looked at some StatCast zone charts, and like righties were handling his pitches down and away a lot better. Like, so they were swinging more and whiffing a ton less and having better WOBA on it. So, and he's just too high for me when I like for walk rate. He's just too high when I like to spec on a reliever. I'm more of a low, I try to get the low whip spec when I do for a reliever. And I just think that I hope so. I'm a Met fan, but I hope as a Philly fan that they're gonna add more bullpen arms to this, because it's still disgusting, right? I mean, we talked about roster resource, and you keep looking, and you're like, wow, they better add some more arms. So I think that's still up there, but I don't know. I used to like the profile on the Rays when and he had the ability to come in and get some saves chances. I think he still might get them, but I don't know if he's as effective as he was. But again, like I said, it was only 39 innings ago where he was really good. So maybe he can flip it around,
Yeah, you can flip it around. Depending on the size of your league, he's still going to get you the ratios because you're going to get some good opportunities there. The strikeouts will be there, but it might be more situational, like you're saying. And maybe that's good for Neris too, because Neris, we've seen him be great, but also have some issues. So it could be one of those like we're seeing in a lot more teams these days. It's like footballs and running backs. Committees, man. It's just the way it's going to go. This one can be short and sweet. I just wanted to get your thoughts on Gregory Polanco. He's got a fractured wrist. It seems like every offseason it's, okay, Gregory Polanco comeback season. I've heard this story over and over again. I can't do it. There's people I really respect that keep giving me arguments for it. I can't do it. Now he's got a fractured wrist that might help everybody not do it. Were you a Gregory Polanco comeback guy, or are you just kind of like me and you're over it?
I wasn't the comeback guy, but I wasn't out of the range he was going at when it was like my first DC, I think in the beginning of November. It was 410-ish. And I was like, okay, maybe. But I hadn't really dug into him as deep as I have done recently. And now, especially with the injury, I'm not, even though a lot of people have said that he should be back for spring training. I went to Derek Rhodes' injury timeline tool, and it just was like
not good.
Everything, the hamstring, the quad, the pinky, the forearm, the wrist, the ear, like it was just, come on, like, what's going on with you? But, it was crazy because he had the COVID, he had the bruised ribs, and then his StatCast stuff was pretty crazy in September. But you striking out nearly 40% of the time. His whiff rate in like every part of the zone is disgusting. Even like middle, he's bad. 42 WRC plus. Yeah, I just think he'll have trouble staying on the field in general. His WAR is very low, so I just think as an overall player, he might not be seeing. And I forget his contract situation. I'm thinking that he's. I forget. I just read it, but I forget it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I was giving it a shot before the injury. Now, definitely no.
It's tough. He's out of options. So I believe. Oh, he's got club options 2023. He's not expensive,
right?
So he's pretty cheap. But yeah, it's just tough. Like he can't stay healthy. Plus that the offense around him isn't great because Josh Bell's gone now, and it's a mess of things. Texas Rangers, they signed Kohei Arihara, from the Japanese league, and he's been one of their better pitchers in Japan. This last year, ERA 3.46, previous 2 years below 2.5. He's an innings eater. He does a little bit of everything. So what's your I'm not saying you're running out to draft him, but now it's a Rangers team that's not great, but he's going to be pitching their second or third in this rotation. He's going to eat innings. Any interest in a guy like Arihara?
It was funny because I think the one thing that caught my eye was that he threw nearly 50 more innings than Lance Lynn last year. So, we think of, and that, maybe that's why they brought over a guy like that at that price, just because he might be, a little bit more stretched out to go than what they have in the major league level. It seems like he has one of those repertoires where it's a bunch of pitches and none of them stand out. They're all pretty good, but he got tons of ways to go, 5 or 6 pitches and, relying on the change of pace and relying on location rather than that raw stuff. And I just think I saw an article on Fangraph that just showed the difference in the seam of the balls and attackiness. Mm-hmm. They said it differed a ton from the MLB, and that's where the pitchers from there tend to struggle with the spin of but they did say though that they preferred that the pitchers had their out pitch be like a sinker or changeup, which his pitchers seemed to be. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is one of those guys where, it just comes to I think your level of risk. Like, where would are you gonna go this route, or are you gonna take a shot at a guy who's 22, may have an upside year? It seems like he might be able to give you some solid innings, though.
Especially at pick 44 right now. Obviously, that's going to come up a little bit, but I don't see it coming up a ton because I thought that last year with like a Josh Lindblom or whatever with the hype, and he still kind of stayed down in the weeds for draft season. So, I mentioned all that stuff I mentioned about Kim. When it comes to these pitchers that, we see the innings and he's based and the price, the draft cost, completely different. I'm much more intrigued to take, Arihara as like my 11th pitcher, that if he has a couple bad starts, I can just drop him instead of a guy like Kim where you have to play him. So I'm intrigued with Arihara. I think I could be buying in there just a little bit, because we've also seen in Texas, Minor, Lynn, all these guys, they make it work.
Right.
And so I'm very intrigued with that.
Right.
All right, just mentioned Josh Bell a second ago. He gets traded to the Washington Nationals, which was quite the interesting move, to say the least. I know they've been looking to shop Josh Bell. They finally did it, and then the Nationals were in need of some help because just a couple years removed from World Series, the lineup was not looking great outside of Trey Turner and Juan Soto for the most part. Bell's supposed to hit cleanup. We know we had that big first half of 2019. It's kind of been doom and gloom since then. Do you think the change of scenery is going to help? When you look at ADP wise, he's going around pick 188, the 20th first baseman off the board. Super cheap. Any interest in Josh Bell?
I don't, because for the biggest part of my reason is that he just isn't in that range of first baseman that I'm going for, like where he is. I like to go to, like, I think I'm up to like 120 with Goldie, and then I'm back in at like 238 with Rowdy. And I think anything in the middle, and he just never. I've never liked him when I get my Bab buckets, my Chandler Bab buckets. He's never like in an asset area that I focus on, or that like a targetable bucket that I'm looking at. Yeah, and you mentioned that that one great start to the 2019, and I just took a look at his rolling graphs and his hills and valleys, wild swings in Woba and O swing, and yeah, this is not a guy I really look to draft.
Yeah, it's really, really tough. I've seen guys try to make the argument for him, and like you mentioned, the guys I'd rather take chances on. Even I'm a guy that would rather take
Christian
a chance
Walker guy. I was just
love
gonna say as soon as I looked up and saw it, I knew you were gonna say that. Yeah,
I would take a chance on him, and I'd even take a chance on Rhys Hoskins before Josh Bell.
100%. I agree.
They're drafted right next to each other. I think there's something to intrigue me with Hoskins, because the one thing, and I'm not going to make this a Rhys Hoskins podcast, but the more I keep looking into him for, like, I had to do the first base and third base for the Black Book, so I had to look a little deeper at the corner positions. And Rhys intrigues me because he gets a lot of hate, and I get it because he had that monster year a couple years back, and people expected that. But you look at like his really good years, also outside of like the last two or so, he's still at 255. Like everything he did last year, he's done like in his good years. People just expect so much more from him. So now you're not paying a premium like you were. He slides right in for me now. It makes sense. So.
I've always liked it, like, because I've known what I was going to get from him. I'm never thinking anything more. Last year, my DC team, he started off terrible, but he went on a run. Luckily I had some depth to bench him, and he went on a run. I think like 10, 11 homers where he just, and he. It was the same week that my team took a huge leap in the standings, and he was a big part of it. And so that should, I have a little special love for Rhys over there too. So yeah, I agree.
Like he's one of those guys. There's a bunch of them, as you do your research, and you obviously do. He's one of those guys that you kind of have a floor you can expect, but a really nice ceiling if things click. Right. Where like Josh Bell's floor, I really don't know where it ends right now. It gets scary. So it's just one of those things when I'm drafting and you want to figure all that out.
And you're right. I find peace in the consistency of 240 and 35. Like, if I know that's what I'm gonna get and where I need to get him on my roster, and that's he's consistently there. So instead of the roller coaster of a guy like Bell. Yep.
100%. A couple other quickers here. Tigers, we've seen them do this time and time again, sign veteran pitchers. They signed Jose Urena, who, when he pitches, is interesting. Like, he kind of like sucks you in a little bit, at least in streaming options. Long-term can be wishy-washy, but we saw some decent stuff towards the end in Miami. Then he just kind of got hurt and whatnot. I know Toby really likes him. Like, he's done deep dives into him. Do you have any interest in Urena, who's going late in drafts right now?
Well, I mean, I don't. And I really didn't do a deep dive because I saw the K minus walk rate at 2%, and I stopped.
Yeah, that's not ideal.
Not ideal. I mean, so, but I'll take. I would love to hear what Toby has to say on it, because obviously I respect that a ton. So, but I don't know. I stopped there. He never drew me in at all. So I don't know. It's just one of those guys where and I guess this is maybe a little bit of a fault, right? When you just like, boom, you like, I'm not going to look at that guy at all because I know I don't like him. And sometimes you don't do as deep of the dive maybe as you have to. So maybe I am missing something, but I don't know. I stopped right there.
No, you're not. It's not a bad one to miss something on. I'll let Toby explain it on the SP2 preview we do next week. Just because it's more the pitch mix that he's a fan of.
Right, and that's what I don't know. So, boom.
Yeah, so I'll have him go into that. And then the last one we have here, another Toby favorite, Hansa Robles, who was once a really elite closer for the Angels. Then the velocity kind of decreased. Got it back towards the end of last season, shortened season. Free agent, signs with the Twins. The Twins team that bullpen was in flux last year as well. You never know. Maybe he slides into a save here or there. They still have Rogers in town. Any interest in a guy like Hansa Robles?
I don't. Again, I still think Rogers is the guy. I think Duffy's better. It's just one of those profiles I look at, and you see like your multiple choice test in school, like which one of these don't fit. In 2019, skills wise, metric wise, doesn't fit. Everything else looks the same, and that season doesn't look the same. So I will bank on the majority of his season showing those skills, and just stay away from him this year.
One more thing I want to ask you. I should have asked you during the Kim conversation, but I want to ask you before we wrap all this up. With the Padres signing Kim, Jake Cronenworth now moves to the outfield or super utility or all kind. His playing time's in flux now. Man. So a guy that was very hyped up after a nice 2020 season, he has multi-position eligibility. What are you doing come draft season with a guy like Jake Cronenworth now?
I think, if you still like the skill set, I don't think you should be hesitant to roster it. Okay. I still, the whole cream rises to the top situation, if you like him, I wouldn't say to take a step back on him. Like we're discussing about Kim, maybe he's not as good as we think he is. So maybe he just falls right back into full time. And he just got that super utility. And I think it'll find its way onto the field.
He reminds me of the modern day Ben Zobrist now. So just embrace it and run.
And the next guy is Zach McKinstry on the Dodgers.
There you go. God, more Dodgers. They just keep doing it. They just torment me. All right, value. This is a fun one because when I saw your tweet, I was like, I'm going to talk to Rob on my podcast anyway, so I'm not going to respond to the tweet because things can get so lost in 240 characters in a conversation. That's one reason I love podcasts, because we can actually talk about things and we kind of understand each other that you can't understand in a tweet. Plus other people get involved and it gets just a million different directions. So I know I use the word value a lot.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, can you first let everybody know what your tweet was, and then what's kind of the basis or crux behind your value comments?
Well, and I use it a lot too. I'm guilty of it, and that's just I'm trying to be a little more conscious of it. And the thing is, I know what everyone means. That's the thing, right? We all know what we mean when we say it, and I get it. I totally get it. I'm not trying to fight anyone on this. It was that I read it like the first time I read about it was Todd Zola and RotoWire, and he was talking about his whole valuation system, and he gets way into depth of the valuations and more than I can even explain or try to. So, but he was just all about saying that it's all about the mindsets, right? It's just all about how the way we're using the word. So he proposed potential. I just think like people use it too freely, like and to some most contexts, like they're using it wrong. Like we really don't know the value these players have for us until they provide the stats, and that's at the year end. That's their actual worth to your team is when you evaluate their production versus where you drafted them. And, the biggest comeback that I get that I like is, I use it when I got Devers at pick 50. So compared to Machado at 20, quote unquote, I got good value, right? Mm-hmm. But you're basically now just assuming that, what both of those end line stats will be, so now you're predicting two, certain, stat lines. And then you can even, then you get more guys lumped in, right? So compared to where Machado, Arenado, and Bregman went, where I got Davis, I got good value, so now you're assuming, 4 sets of stat lines. I don't know. So that's what I mean, that's what to me, that's what value is, like, I don't know. If you were like in the market for a TV and you did your research and you read all the reviews, 900,000 reviews, Amazon, wherever you can find them, and you had a price range, you narrowed it down, you go get one, right? And because it was like the best acquisition cost for your budget in terms of like the price point, the reviews, and all the LTVs you're looking at, and then in 4 months, like the pitcher sucks, right? Mm-hmm. Did you get good value? Right? Like maybe when you bought it, you're like, oh, this is a great value, but it's just a different, like it should just be a different term. Like I believe I made a good cost, like acquisition cost for this TV because it didn't get you good value. Like, and so I don't know, maybe that's a bad analogy. I just feel like it should just be more, just a little more focus on how we use it and not so freely, I guess.
No, it makes a ton of sense because I know that's when I use it a lot is when we're comparing, this player to this player, it brings value because I guess, and you say, why we're doing it because in your head you're saying, okay, this guy should produce blah, 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 blah. So compared to this guy who produces similar output, I'm getting value.
Right.
So that's what we're doing there. But you're correct, because we really don't know if that's value. It's perceived, as you mentioned. So my question is, so we're on the same page here, and my question is, what should we call it when we're doing analysis for a draft season and we're comparing players? Is it the cost benefit? Because then people get mad that we're talking about the price of someone because they're individual and we shouldn't talk about their price. So that's why I want to have the conversation. What should we call it that makes sense, that actually is what it is, if that makes sense as well?
Right, and then I was like thinking about perceived value, right? But then that's another sensitive thing, because then you're like, then you're casting like a perceived,
what
judgment
someone actually works.
Like nothing worked, Bubba. This and that. I've been thinking about it, and I, like I said, I think Todd Zola, the potential, is the one you threw out. I've been thinking, and like everything is sensitive, or I don't know. I think maybe we should like all just like do like a real big analyst dive, like brainstorm, get together on a Zoom and figure this all out.
All the proper terminology,
right? Because you just want to be able to say like, I think for where I got Devers compared to the other guys by the end of the year, because you don't want to say all that. That's the thing. So we're just choosing like a nice safe route. We say one word, everyone knows what we mean. So I guess we just have to find a different word, Bubba. That's what we have to do. We
need a new safe word. That's
what
we need.
I love it. So that's our resolution, basically, is to find a new word for value.
We skip ahead to the end. No. But that's why I liked the discussion, because I'm like, I totally get what Rob's saying. 100% agree. And I'm guilty as all heck about saying value. Probably, I bet you if you listen to the last podcast I did, I probably said it 45 times. Like I do it all the time. I think when I write an article, I write value probably 12 times. Like I'm very guilty of it, but it's so hard to put into words without making it kind of a whole different situation.
Right. So. And I think it's a little bit different too. You're doing a podcast, you're talking about hypotheticals, you're looking at EDP. Like if someone's tweeting out their draft that they just got in the NFBC and like, I just got a great value on this guy. You could have took the time out to say something different.
Well, at least be like, hey, I expect him to produce here compared to this person producing here. So this is why I like this pick over this pick.
Right. That's it. That's exactly it. And we're just choosing, I guess, quickness.
Shortcut.
Yeah. We're using shortcuts.
All right. No. Well, I have the feeling that discussion is going to keep going on for a while. So
absolutely.
We'll see where that one keeps going. But let's get into some New Year's resolutions here. And this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do 5 players each that we kind of have a pros and cons resolution on. Then a couple strategy things, and then an overall resolution at the end before we go to listener questions. So I'll let you kick it off as the guest. What is your first player New Year's resolution?
I'm not drafting Zach Plesac. Not where he's going. I don't get the love. I think people are throwing out 2019, and I don't know how, and that's like the majority of his sample size. I don't know, just like league and division context first. Like the Indians they've gotten worse, and they're continuing to get worse. It looks like the Central bats were trash last year. In that short little season we have, 8 out of the bottom 10 teams in OPS. Only the White Sox were in the top 16 in WRC plus. Same thing with WOBA. They won 2 games in the playoff. They got smoked. I don't know. It was just like general context starting off without even getting to his skill set. I just don't like it. There's a lot of things there to be wary of. Ron, right out of the forecast, Ron Chandler, the top, according to Rotodollars earned, top 4 were from the Central, and 9 out of the top 16 were from the Central. So I don't know. The swing strike on fastballs 3% lower than league average. His whiffs per swing is 7% lower than league average. His ball percentage, which another thing in the forecaster, they have a link from ball percentage to like expected walk percentage, and so his range of 34% balls puts him a little more on that 6 to 7% walk, which is double than what he showed in 2020. The CSW in the last 2 years combined is below average. So I don't know. I heard he's a plug and play type of guy, 6th and 7th inning. He's going to work, but he doesn't really do great work in the 6th and 7th inning. In 2019, even he had 15 innings with a 3.2 K minus BB. And in 2020, it was 8%. So it's not like he's getting to those innings and thriving. So maybe that'll get cut off. And this one is just a hat tip to our guy, Toby. Can't do a show without mentioning Toby, but he brought up that 3-2 count stuff on Bauer, and it was pretty cool. I did a bunch of diving on it, and he overperformed in that regard too, like Bauer did. So even going back to 2000, K minus BB percentage and full counts, you're looking at Sale and Maddox at the top, 9.5%, Maddox 8%, and Plesac was at 43% last year. So unless you think he's Maddox or Sale, I think that goes back down to 2 or 3%, like the league average, or maybe even a little higher, but it still takes away a lot of his Ks. And something I think also ties into that, I heard Alex Fast bring this up, but he had 6 pitches that were balls outside of the zone that got called third strikes for strikeouts. So 6 strikeouts that were questionable, along with the full count stuff. I don't know, just overall, when I look at all of that, I see regression and a walk tick. I know some people argue maybe his great command caused that, to him to overperform it, but the same argument can be made that that luck led to the great, ratios, right? So that's what I'm looking at. That's why I really don't trust him at that ADP.
There's the part that gets me is the ADP.
Right.
I did the diving on the last podcast. I keep looking at his stats. I agree with everything you said, because what you just argued there is how I argued Shane Bieber in the past. He lives on the corners. He gets these extra strikes. His command is elite that helps him do this, that, and the other. And if he slips up, it's going to be just bad. It's not going to go well. Plesac's the same thing to me, except Plesac's velocity went down this past year, which is a little concerning as well. Right. But you dig into his with Plesac, to me, he's very good. His command's very good. If he adjusts his pitch mix a little bit, he could be really, really good. If he stops using the fastball so much and goes more slider, changeup, curveball, those 3 pitches are very, very good. It's just a matter he still throws that fastball a ton, and it's not that great. So That's where I get my confusion with him. I still think he's going to be a very good pitcher, and I wouldn't be shocked if he has a good season. But the part that I'm with you on is I won't draft him pretty much anywhere, because at pick 56, we just talked about Blake Snell going 5 picks earlier. You have Lance Lynn going behind him. You have Sonny Gray, who I love. You have Carlos Carrasco. All these guys I'd rather take. The question for you is you have Zach Plesac at pick 57, the other hot button name Corbin Burns at 55, and Burns is a big question mark with innings. If you had to take one or the other, which one would you take?
I'm taking Burns by far.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I have Plesac as SP35.
Ooh, God, Dave McDonald must love you. All right, my first resolution. This one is 2 players that I'm gonna be very overweight on, because what I project them to be this season is much better than their draft price at the moment.
I like it.
And I like it. Tommy Pham and Andrew McCutchen are 2 outfielders I'm going to have a lot of come draft season, especially Andrew McCutchen. Both these guys are just going way too late. And obviously, these are November, December drafts. So we have a ton of McCutchen pick 201 to me is lunacy. And then you have Pham at 120. That's getting more reasonable. It keeps creeping up. So that's going to be interesting. But if McCutchen stays where he's getting drafted, leading off for the Phillies, a guy that's got the chance to produce potentially 20-plus home runs. We've seen it with Kutch before. He's going to swipe bags, maybe 15-plus. He's slowing down in that regard a bit, but still maybe it's 10. Steamer's got 26 and 9 with a 246. I think the average is low. They're lowballing him there. But he's going to help you in all 5 categories, close to pick 200. He's going to be a guy I got circled quite a bit. Tommy Pham I love as well. So between both of those guys, I'm going to have at least one of them probably on every team I have, if not both, as just stable outfield sources that I just put in my lineup and walk away. So I'm a big fan of those 2.
I like those choices a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, the stable choices. I think Pham, he's interesting. He's just, I don't know. Our thoughts change so quickly in such a short year. So be wary of where did he end up last year? In the 70s and 80s by main event season. So I'm with you there. Those are great choices.
All right, what's your second resolution?
To get as much Kyle Tucker as I can. He's super high on my BABS board and my Mayberry method rankings. I just love his all around skill set. He's, so toolsy already. And, but besides the, you get the power speed, get the aggregate of HQs and Masters ball and steamers at 29, 22. I like that. But he doesn't, he hits all pitch types well. That's what I marveled at when I looked at his page. He's hitting every single type of pitch where, not struggling with any portion of the plate. He didn't have a negative run value for any part of the plate, the hard to shadow, the chase, the weight. I just see a very professional hitter already that I think will only get better. And yeah, possible, would you be surprised if he did 2020 only? Yeah. But would you be also surprised? No, but would you also be surprised if he did 35? No, that range of outcomes excites me. And I think he's going to be more toward, that top end. So yeah, give me some Kyle Tucker this year.
Yeah, he's a very, very fun conversation to have because he's going high in drafts. The talent level's insane. Should finally have the playing time. So it'll be very interesting to see how that one comes into play. My next one, and it's going to make a few people angry, but as a Giants fan, I'm going to say it. I am not going to overdraft Kevin Gossman. I love Kevin Gossman. What he did last year was phenomenal. He's not pick 118 worthy for me. If you believe what you saw last year is what he's going to be, awesome. But we haven't seen that pretty much. It's like a little bit in 18, a little bit in 16, but for the most part, we've seen something a little higher. And the steamer projections love him, which is very interesting as well. We know he's made the pitch mix changes, using the splitter more and all that jazz, which is great. But he's still, for the most part, a four-seam fastball and a little bit of a not a cutter so much, but a two-seamer. Those are his main pitches still if you go off of the pitch leaderboard. Actually, the split finger is the one. It went up to 42% usage. It was pretty awesome, obviously, but the splitter is the one that can disappear the fastest as well. It's the one that's hard to control. I think he's a really good pitcher, but pick 118, Pablo Lopez right before him. You have Charlie Morton. Lance McCullers, love him or hate him. He's around there. There's a bunch of guys that I think I'll be taking the chance on. The price for Kevin Gossman in drafts right now is, for a guy, like I said, I'm not risk averse. He brings risk to the table. So you better have a stable core coming into it. So I will not overdraft Kevin Gossman this year.
That's a good resolution, Bubba. Especially that involves your own team. It's
risk reward. If he pitches well, I get to enjoy it in real life. So it works out.
Absolutely.
What's your third resolution?
My third resolution is to attempt a team build with Mondesi. Obviously, you don't have to go through the discussions everyone's always talking about with him. It's just more of the strategy thing when I think about how to handle a guy like Mondesi. And what I think that people do wrong when they draft him is they stop drafting steals. And I actually think you should, not keep compensating, keep targeting it, because if you want to bake in his, you think he's going to drop in the lineup, or, he's going to miss some games from soft tissue injuries. Well, if you're going to bake that in and you're anticipating losing him for some time, why not just back your team up with some more steals so you could just keep pace while he's out? And then if he doesn't, lose any time, or he has that season that you're wishing for, he could, talk about returning value at the end of the year. He could very well be a first round guy. So I just want to attempt a build with him. So, I think it'll be fun. So it's all about crafting, really knowing what you want to do before, and that's it.
Yeah. The biggest thing, like you said, is when you enter that draft room, know exactly what you want to do, because you have to be able to bob and weave. And I love the point you made is basically when you draft him, go and just destroy the stolen base competition. Just go and take it all and see how it goes from there. So I like that call quite a bit.
I really would love to start off with like him and Tucker in the second, third. Like in the beginning of the draft season, it was like we were able to do it. Now it's getting like looking at ADP, it looks like a little harder to tackle. Like I was looking at like going Cole first, and then just doing the Wheeler, the Tucker Mondesi type of, and I was like, wow, I'm like maybe that could be like a really interesting type of build, So
no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you two stat lines. In 2020, this player hit 289 with 16 homers, 33 runs, 34 RBIs, and 6 stolen bases. His teammate hit 308 with 11 homers, 28 runs, 33 RBIs, and 3 stolen bases. Pretty close. Not great. Like a little less on home runs. If you look at Steamer now, player A, the first one mentioned, projected at 240 with 30 homers, 77 runs, 86 RBIs, and 9 steals. Where player B, 271, 29, 79, 90, and 8. So projected to be better than player A. Do you know who these two players are? They're teammates.
Man, they're teammates. Are they on the White Sox?
No.
Braves?
Baby Blue Jays. I'll give you that much.
Baby Blue Jays. Okay, so you're talking about Teoscar and Gurriel?
Yes.
Okay.
And my third resolution. Lourdes Gurriel should be drafted ahead of Teoscar and will perform better than Teoscar in 2022.
I love it. I love it.
I rage. Not all projections are 100%, but we saw what they did last year. And my biggest takeaway, and I am a gigantic Teoscar fan. He's not hitting 289. He's more of a 250 hitter. Where Gurriel, his lowest he's ever hit was 277. Like he's gonna hit you for an average. They both have a lot of pop. They're both gonna steal bases. A lot of similarities. That offense is going to be very good. So there's going to be some weeks where Gurriel drives them all in, other weeks Hernandez drives them all in. I think you're going to have more Hernandez slumps than Gurriel slumps. So on a week-to-week situation, Gurriel, I almost feel more comfortable as plugging in and going with. And the last thing I'll mention here is the gap has shrunk. I'll put it this way. But Teoscar picked 73, Gurriel 81, 20th and 22nd outfielder. It used to be a much wider gap. So that gap is starting to shrink. I looked at the ADP for the first time now when I made the resolution. I didn't look at the ADP. This was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. But I'm going Gurriel over Teoscar, which is probably not what majority of Twitter will agree with. But that's one thing. My resolution is don't reach for Teoscar. Take something else with that pick. Get Gurriel the pick after, or reach for Gurriel. One of those two things.
I like that, Bubba. I really do, because like I'm looking at his on my Babs sheet for displayed skill set last year, just last year, and he's there with Machado, Jose Ramirez, and Eloy. So I like it.
And he's only 27, so enjoy that.
Yeah, I like that. Good point.
All right, what's your fourth resolution?
Oh, okay. So similar as to Mondesi, I want to dip my toe in the water with a share of Vladito. Again, we know the arguments for and against him. And again, I think this is all about how you like to draft your team, and I think that if I could really nail my first two, or my first 4 picks, like 2 pitchers, 2 batters, like take an upside play with him. Because, like one thing I like to do is I go through finding something wrong for everyone at either a position or like a specific run of ADP. And when I did that for first base, his like quote unquote needs more lift didn't stand out as bad as the other guys, pessimistic view. So when I looked at it in that way, I'm like, well, nobody else is really perfect either. So, and if he does, it's just loft, we're just looking for loft. And the best play is probably to wait one more year, at least, and just get a look if he can do it. But, at them doing league, I like to, spread my portfolio a little bit. And he's like not a guy that I've had yet in like last 2 years and this year. And I just feel like I want to dip my toe in. I want to try because, obviously he had that league winning, upside that we all want. So yeah, I'm going to try going against my smarter instincts and saying, don't do it yet, but I'm just going to fight it. I'm going to fight that one.
I don't hate it because he's got the plate discipline to, at worst, get on base, score some runs. He's got great hit tools That's never been the issue. It's the elevation, like you mentioned, which is weird because when he does elevate it, it goes a long, long ways. Right. So it's just a matter of tweaking it. And you mentioned it. If you're in an overall, this guy could win you the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Like if he clicks, he might not. But that's the kind of gambles you have to take. Like, do you take a gamble on Vladito at that point with his upside, or do you wait like till round 18 to take the gamble? Like the difference in the production is not the same. So take your gamble early, get your safer plays later type situation. Mm-hmm. I totally get it. Like if it's a standalone league, maybe not, but in an overall, I can support it 100% because I think the ceiling for a Vlad when he starts to get going, you're talking like, and people know him much better than me, but just from what I've seen, I know the talent level. And if you want to try to compare it to his father, which people say sometimes that he hits better than his dad, I don't know, but you got to imagine 35 plus home runs. Right. And he's in that lineup, and they're going to be playing in Buffalo again this year. Right. And we saw what that ballpark did.
We saw it, right? Absolutely. And you know what? When I had Ryan Bloomfield on my pod, he made a great point, and it sticks with me every time I look at Vlad. You know, he said, he goes, you know, it's harder to teach a guy to smash the ball as hard as he does than to teach a guy to lift it. You know, and so he has the one part that's harder, you know, to do. So, and that's ingrained in me. Thank you, Bloomfield and the Bloom boards. But, you know, and I guess it's just like a common theme. My last two, it's like, you know, my resolution is to just be like maybe a little less risk averse and try to go a little more upside play.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And that's one thing I try to tell myself, and that'll be in one of my resolutions coming up here, is as boring as steady Eddie as I like to be, is sometimes, you know, you got to look at things and realize tweaks happen. Do you want to be ahead of that curve or do you not? Like we mentioned with Kim coming overseas, I'll wait. But a guy like Vlad, we've seen in a couple of years, you know how close he is. He's putting in the time. Like he was willing to go play in the Dominican League or Puerto Rican League or one of the ones down there, which he didn't need to do. Like he does, like he's got an established position. Like he did not need to be there, and he was there. So that just tells you kind of where he's at in this whole thing, that he's really trying to figure it out.
Right. And I think that's a big thing to take into context. You know, you see the weight, you know, come off. You see that. So maybe Papa got in his ear, you know, and say, hey, buddy, you want to be great? It's time to smarten up, you know. And sometimes, okay, you're right. You know, like he got this far just on raw skill, you know, and talent. And plus, you know, that dual eligibility. If he goes back to third, he'll get that third back, right? So first and third, I'm saying. So, yeah. Going Vladito.
Don't hate it at all. You're going to start twisting my arm, it seems like. Because I tell myself no, and then my next resolution will kind of go that route is if you don't get one of the big first basemen early, and I'll throw Vlad in there to be nice. But that position, like there's that middle area of like the top 10, a lot of volatility in there. Right. Like the Voits and the Alonsos and the Olsons, a lot of upside, a lot of ceiling, a lot of volatility. I think this is one of those years where I've kind of avoided them in recent years. But the boring Anthony Rizzo's and Paul Goldschmidt's of the world going about pick 100 is they're just so boring to pick. It's like watching paint dry. But you look at their end of season numbers and it's just like, yeah, they were a top 10 first baseman. And now I'm getting them outside pick 100. These are guys I used to pick early in drafts. I don't have any of them on my rosters at the moment because when I go to take them, someone else jumps ahead of me there. But it's one of those, like both teams, Rizzo, the back issues always concern me, but I think as a whole, that Cubs offense was so bad last year, they can't all be that bad again. They just can't. And then the Cardinals with the COVID situation and everything, I'm going to give that just a complete – their schedule is just disaster. So I think you're getting interesting prices on Goldie and Rizzo that I'm going to try to convince myself to not be as bullish on them and be willing to roster them a little more than I had in previous years.
And you know what? I think it's the smart play. You know, you see Dom Smith and Muncy and – you know, the guys around them. And I don't know, I find myself, I did a DC in the beginning of November, and it was one of like an early one, and I got Goldschmidt in the 120s, and I was super ecstatic. And I ended up getting Santana in the 400.
The Santana price is just
you know, and that was like first thing when he was still a free agent. So he's
still 281 in the month of December. That's ridiculous. Wow. He's going after Andrew Vaughn, who doesn't have a job at the moment.
Doesn't have a job. It's pretty wild. It's really crazy, right? But yeah, no, I love that because even in the best balls, I think in and in the 3 best balls I've done, I've gotten either reserve goalie. So that's the way I'm going with first base right now. It seems to be where I like to fall. I see those guys where they're going 100. I think I've gotten them each time in the 100s. And the best ball they went a little higher because I just wanted to make sure I got first base. And but they were my targets. When I wanted to go first.
Yep, I'm with you there. What is your 5th player resolution?
This is going back to our Darvish talk, and this is Mr. Giolito. I want him on my fantasy team this year for sure. That zone contact, that's the one that draws me, and I think that's the biggest driver of me targeting him. He throws it in there, and they're not doing anything with it. 3 pitches. 3 pitches with CSW is over 32%. He's a stud. So I want to be brave enough to, maybe when I get up to those March draft to take him at the end of the first round.
Yep.
If he hasn't gone there already, I think he almost did, or I think that's all.
He's close. He's picked 20, or he's gone as high as 15.
So maybe. Someone went there already once. So he probably end up there though, right? I guess that's the word.
No, he's gonna creep in there. Like Toby was saying, he wouldn't be shocked if like 7 or 8 guys enter the first round by March.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
let's do the names now.
All the bats that start falling.
Yeah.
Trevor Story middle of round 2. Like Jesus.
Oh yeah, please sign me up.
So mine kind of goes in the Giolito vein because you had Giolito, so I didn't want to go just straight Giolito. But people, if they listen to the last podcast, episode 330. You know exactly what I feel on Giolito. And like he's the guy that if you had to pick one guy to jump into the top 3, it's him. Like I think he could be number 1. Like I think he's that good. So I like Giolito a ton. So I want to draft Giolito. But what I'll say in a roundabout way is I want my goal, like I've talked about in a lot of places, I want at least 3 pitchers in the first 5 rounds. That's one thing I really, really want to do because I feel like as much as I like to wade in the middle of the starting pitcher world, it's really, really murky. So I want like 3 guys I can trust week in and week out. You're in my lineup. I don't have to worry about you. You're in. But to make it a finer point, I want to make sure I get at least one of the big 3, Cole DeGrom, Bieber, Giolito, or Luis Castillo. I want one of those 5 to be my ace every go-round. So that'll be my resolution. I want to make sure I leave every draft at least one of those big 5 for me.
Right. And not just say, but Jose Ramirez was right there. Yeah. No, I know. It's tough. It's tough because I've always been a bat guy first. And
so am I. I can tell about 2 or 3 years ago, like I would never take a pitcher like before like round 7 or something. I thought it was crazy talk. But
that's where the values are the value. That's where the profit that's where the profit potential is laying right now, though. It's grabbing those guys early because of the way the ADP is falling, So it's definitely a good strategy.
All right, now we're gonna do 3 resolutions, like 3 goals or changes to our strategies, the way we play fantasy baseball as fantasy baseball players. We're gonna do 3 resolutions. So go with your first one. For this is all about you. It doesn't be player based, whatever. What's your first one?
Oh, my first goal is to win the main event that I get into this year.
Always a good goal.
Yeah. So last year, it was my first go around, and it was a learning experience, an expensive one, but it was great. And I know what I need to get better. So I really want to get into it and do it.
Well, that's one of the kudos I want to give you because you've opened my eyes to a lot of things because you're very open and honest about your performances, which I think everybody needs to be, but not everybody is. Right. And you flat out, like you barely ever talk about winning the DC unless someone asks you. You almost always talk about how you got smoked in a main event and what you've learned from that. And I think that's so important to, we can always do fun, good things and be successful at certain things, but unless you learn from what you did wrong, I know this is very cliche, you're never going to get better. And you talk about it so much. And I think it's really interesting because it's not like you were in a $10 best ball. Like you were in a main event where you had to pony up some cash. Yeah. And you're like, you know what? It is what it is. It might have been the best investment I ever made type thing. Like we're gonna move on from that. I think that's very important for people to listen to because I don't play in the high stake stuff. So I'm not there. I live vicariously through many of you. And when I hear you guys talk about it, most guys, it's like you watch them on Twitter. They're living and dying with cashing. Where we're like, okay, well, we're gonna do this. I learned this. I learned this. I'm gonna do better here. I'm like, wow, like you didn't even like sulk for a while. You're just like, okay, we're moving on. This is what we got going. And like that was big. So I want to give you kudos there. Thank you. The other question I was going to ask you earlier in the pod, but I wanted to wait till now because you mentioned you're going to be in the main event. How many main events, how many draft champions do you plan on doing since you were the overall draft champions winner last year? You have a little extra bankroll probably in your NFBC account. What are you planning on going with your play exposure this year?
I'm still going to only do one main event because I want to focus in on it. I don't want to get spread too thin.
I like that.
I feel like I had that last year with general home leagues, and I was a little over my head sometimes with Fab, and I just want to make sure that I can, give my all to one league and get better at that. So I'm going to stick to the one main. I just bought a 3-pack of, draft champions, the 151s. I'm not going crazy, because I haven't worked in a year either. So that's it kind of offset the me winning. So, but not going to go nuts, just going to keep it respectable again, like probably 3 to 5 DCs. I see myself doing it, probably 2 or 3 more of those, the best balls, and maybe, a couple of the $10 ones with the industry guys, because that's fun. And I actually just, we're doing the Battle of the Pod, podcast league, and Matty Wood just started a standalone NFBC league, but you had to have teammates. Yeah, you have to have a partner, and that was pretty cool. It was a highlight of my day when Jenny Butler, DM'd me asking me if I wanted to play, and I was like, yeah, hell yeah, Jenny, let's do it. So I'm super excited, and just like I got about 2 or 3 dynasty leagues and 1 home keeper league, and that's it. It's a lot, but not gonna go super crazy with the mains. I just want to concentrate on one and win it.
No, and you said it well, because that's one reason why I keep doing these industry leagues. A, because I like to draft. B, I like to get more people in them. And C, they're best ball, so I don't have to worry about fab later. Right. Like, we can still have fun. We can still do our thing. Right. Draft champions, the same. I'm doing the NFBC 50s, similar stuff. Like, when it comes down to fab, it's so time consuming. If you want to do it right, you can't have a ton unless, like, I know I keep bringing Toby up, but he talks about it. The dude is like a zombie come Sunday afternoon. We used to do Sunday night shows, and I'm usually tired on Sundays, but he's exhausted because Saturday night he stays up to like 3 or 4 in the morning doing fab. Like, that's just, I can't do that. So, like, I give him power, he can do it, but I can't do it. So I try to limit the deal there. So I'm glad you said that. I think I won't give away all the teams that are in the one Maddie's putting together, but I think it's cool. Like, you and Jenny, like, it's unique combos. It's not just like exclusive to like big names in the industry. Yeah. I think it's really cool seeing like the other one I won't mention them all, but like Justin Mason's going to team up with Shelly V. I think that's awesome.
Right.
Like there's some really cool combos that I love how certain things in the industry don't seclude everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and totally. So I'm a big fan of seeing stuff like that.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited about that. It's so cool.
Okay, my first one, and it's kind of, you picked the main. I picked a different route. I was going to start doing it last year. The pandemic hit, so I did not continue on. But it was a big topic of conversation before last season when I was talking on Twitter, and people think I hated the NFBC, and that was not it at all. It was about the price points for a lot of the average player can't play in these tournaments.
Right.
So I used the argument that if you think you're good enough, we can build bankrolls. So it's kind of like a bankroll challenge. So I was going to do anywhere from 3 to 5 like RotoWire qualifiers that are $50 each and stuff like that, like to kind of show how can we build our bankroll to move up the levels, because that was the argument everybody made. So my goal is I'm going to enter 5-ish, maybe a couple more of those RotoWire qualifiers, and my goal is to win at least 2 of them. And awesome. So I'm gonna that's the thing, is I'm going to try to limit to those, and then I'll have like a couple other fab leagues. So those will be my exclusive like fab leagues. And then, and part of me thinks, okay, I can go spend a few $100 doing that instead of thinking one big thing. That's kind of my mindset. But my goal is to show people we can do this, and that's kind of how I want to go about it. So my goal is to win at least 2 of the qualifiers. That's my goal this year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I like that, and I like that. Just showing people that there's different ways to get to where you want to play, and like people with DMing me that weren't really knew about the NFC, and I didn't. This is my first year. Well, I did a second chance league in 2019, but 2020 was my first full season playing NFBC. It took me a while to get to there too, but it was just did it at home. It was just winning leagues at home and just getting on a bankroll. And if it wasn't going on vacation with the wife, it was, I told her it was a goal of mine, last year. It's like, when I win one of the home leagues, I want to play this league, this main event league, and I want to play against the best. And so, that was my goal. And like you said, it's great because you can show people like, hey, you don't have to just go there immediately, have a firm place, a firm step in hand, and get there. I like that.
And you get comfortable with the formats and all that stuff before you're just jumping into the shark infested waters.
That's huge. Right.
Yeah. All right. What's your number 2?
Oh, so my number 2 is I just want to become more well-versed on like valuation systems. To hear Toby and Phil talk about the SGP and reading the process, talking about the Z-score methods and things about that. I never really dabbled with, like spreadsheets and stuff like that, like union carpenters don't really fuck with that stuff. So, but so now that I'm learning stuff and I'm like, oh, wow, this is cool. Like what, and not to say I'm just going to totally use it, but I just want to, know about it. I want to know what everything means and how other people approach, valuing players, because I think it's pretty cool how sometimes, I'll talk to plenty of people and they'll talk about a player and it's like, wow, you do things so differently than I do, but we feel the same way about a player, and I marvel at that because it's pretty cool how we can get to the same decision on a person with having different routes to get there. So that's my goal. I want to learn SGP and, really understand it and, maybe try to incorporate it any way I can to help me, because I think part of winning a main event is like I want to know what how other people draft too. So if I could notice a trend of the way guys drafted or a valuation system he may be using, maybe I can use it to my advantage. So that was my second goal.
Yeah, my second's very similar to that. I want to, and I don't know if I'll get to it this year, but I want to keep working towards it. I want to be able to make my own projections, but a lot of that involves Excel work and stuff that I'm very stupid with. So I want to be able to do stuff like that so I can use what's in my head of how I'm looking at this player and talking about this player and actually show it to people. Like, these are why I feel this way about them, instead of just reading Steamer, which they're really solid and they're good for a reason. So that's why I use them. But I want to be able to come up with maybe not like ATC projections, but use something that I can make work. And I might just do it, go with the smart fantasy one and go check out all that stuff. I don't know. But I want to be able to do something kind of more customizable to my thought process, my draft process. Maybe when I do that, then there's guys that stand out or don't stand out that I need to go look at more. Stuff along those lines. And I want to be able to do that. And people say, even Phil talks about it, it's super simple with Excel. And when I was in college, I knew it very well. College was a long time ago. So I need to get back into that. But I'd love to be able to get closer to doing like my own projections instead of the joke I make on the show that I'll give you caveman projections and we'll go from there. So that's my number 2.
And that's it's funny you mentioned Phil. Like, he's great. Phil's awesome. Like, and when he tells me the same thing you say, like he just wants to be able to know that it's his valuation, it's his outlook on things. And sometimes when you just hear someone explain something a certain way, like you just did too, it really rings true, right? It's like, wow, like, I'm drafting off of what other people think. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to do what I want to think, like how I think. And that's awesome. That's great. I would, that's an awesome goal, Bubba. That's it's still going to be labeled caveman projections though, right?
But, of course.
Yes. Of course. Awesome.
Yeah. Or
I think that's such a big sell.
Yeah.
That's a t-shirt. That's everything.
It's a niche department. No one's really gone caveman on it. Like, it'll be great.
Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome.
What's your number 3?
So I want to try to so I was just reading the forecaster and just looking at starting pitching, relief pitching landscape in general. The last 4 or 5 years been such a shift in the amount of innings the starters are throwing and the relievers are throwing. And I think when you have shifts in like league landscape like that, you kind of have an opportunity maybe to find the next way to draft a team, a next team build, like a pocket aces per se, but not pocket aces, So I want to just attempt to implement and execute that next strategy. Like, I know it's a daunting task, but like I said, I think it helps when landscape changes. It's like when something changes, like baseball's changing now, like you might be able to find something that may be able to work. Maybe it's like hybrid strategy of pitchers and 2 or 3 inning pitchers like Freddie Peralta's and Luis Patino's. Like who knows? Like whatever you find your way to do. So that's what I'm gonna try to do. I want to try to come up with something really. It's gonna take a lot of work and a lot of vision, but I'm gonna try it. Something crazy.
I like it. I'm looking forward to it because there's pocket aces. I've heard the term full house for this year, which is kind of what in a roundabout way, that's what I'm trying to do. I didn't realize that's what it is, but that's what people are doing. I know guys in your vein of the kind of the Seth Lugos of the world and stuff get Franken aces, put like 2 of those guys together to create an ace. That's more of a daily moves league. So how do you do it in an NFBC league? I'm with you. It'd be fun to find the next one for sure.
Would you say cranking aces? Sorry,
Franken ace, like Frankenstein, but
gotcha.
you create an ace by using like 2 pitchers, like you like a Seth Lugo, and when he was like a 2 or 3 inning guy with someone else, create a Franken ace.
Interesting, I like it. I never heard that before. Where have I been?
Yeah, no, it's all good. My last one, and it's one I could probably put on every season because I need to get better and better at it. I want to be better with Fab. I really can't expand too much more than that. It's just I need to be more efficient with it. I talk about it as, don't just put in one move for a guy that if you don't win that bid, he's still on your roster. Put in 12 moves, so at least you get someone that you might be willing to use that week instead of like. There's a lot of the Fab process I really need to figure out that I need to continue to get better at. So Fab is a big one that I'm pretty sure it's going to be on my list for quite a while.
That's great. You know what? I'm like kind of mad I didn't pick that one too because looking back, I'm like, yeah, that just hearing you say it now, like, yeah, I had a ton of work to do in that too, especially with that backup bid thing. And like you say, know how the league site works. That's why I think that little brief intro I did to the NFBC in a second chance league in 2019 helped me. I felt like I was a ton behind, like I was learning on the fly because this. But definitely understand and know how to do that. It's not easy, and I think that and this is what I learned in the main event. Like it was sometimes I was looking at some of the batters going for like $1 or $2, and I'm like, what are these guys gonna do this week? And those were the guys that were, so I'm missing something there that I want to reevaluate in my head. Like how are these specific $1 or $2 bids always outperforming the ones going for 112? So yeah, stuff like that. Awesome, Bubba.
All right, the last resolution we have. What is one resolution that you want for yourself as a member of the fantasy community?
Oh well, I just want to promise myself and my supporters that I want to get better, as a podcaster, as an analyst, as a fantasy player. I want to become better at everything, better friend, a better person, all that fun stuff. You're just trying to better myself all the time. And just having met so many people now and, networking out is pretty cool. So I just want to really reinforce all those, all the new friendships I made. I just want to really have like a nice, community. And so and also for like a full baseball thing too, to incorporate more, like I really want to try to get into the the science of baseball, like the swing path stuff, the seam wake shift that I'm reading about now. I'm like, oh my God, what is this stuff? Is it going to help me? So like, that's the thing. It's like, and so, I know like the whole age of information, like it just explodes at you, and it's just like the StatCast stuff too. So maybe if this stuff is going to be the next thing, like the point of contact, stuff like that, like I want to understand the verbiage now. So when we're starting to like throw around stats, I'm like, oh, okay, I know what that means, So it's like when you first get into analytics and you read about WOBA and like, you have to know what it means, to really use it as an evaluation. So yeah, I want to learn anything I can in the scientific world and see if I can apply it into fantasy, because I know it could help me in baseball, just watching baseball, but hopefully maybe find a way to apply it to winning fantasy.
No, I'm with you there. So yeah, we're pretty similar. Obviously, I want to get better at growing the podcast. I want to be better at writing, and that's a goal I've had for like 3 straight years, and I'm writing more and more every year. So that's something I want to do, because if you think my K-band projections are funny, you should have saw some of my first articles. Those were entertaining. But I think if I had to pick one thing I really want to do better, and I mentioned it during the pandemic, I've done a little bit of it, but I'd like to do more. I want to get better at video content because I think that's definitely kind of a wave of the future type. That's where everything's going. It feels like you're either podcasting or you're doing a video, like a vlog or something. I'd like to do better at being able to like edit videos and use graphics and stuff along those lines. Right. That's one thing I really want to do this year.
That would be, yeah, that's cool. That's a good goal. That's something I think, and you're right. That's the thing. That's the next wave of attracting, you know, a crowd and just really getting out like content in a different way, you know, because some people just absorb things better too, you know, visually. Yep. So yeah, that's awesome, Bubba. I love it.
Yeah, for some reason, people like I've always had a face for radio, but people actually want to see it for some reason, and I don't get it. But to each their own. Let's do some listener questions here. Our buddy David Mendelson from Triple Play Fantasy, he asks, "What is it like winning that much money like you did in fantasy baseball? If I could win a sum like that, my fiance might actually think the amount of time I spend in this world would be worth it."
That's funny. D. Mendelson. I love Dave. He's so it's funny he mentioned the fiance, you know, being more accepting of that. You know, it's like it definitely helps, you know. It's like
it does not hurt.
It did not hurt, but you know, I'm lucky. I'm grateful. I had a wife who pushed me, to try my hand in these things and not like say, hey, you know, what are you doing? So she realized I love it, and so anyway, it was a crazy feeling. You know, it was I still can't really describe it. You know, it was amazing, and it was also a complete shock. You know, I was saying before, like just for general context, like the end of 2019 sucked for like my whole family and me. So the way that it led to that, the podcast, and then winning that, it was just like that was what like really took me over, like took my body over. Like wow, like this just happened like that, you know, like it's like a fairy tale fucking story. Excuse my language, but you know, it's like it really was, and it was funny. I never forget it because I sat there staring at the screen. Bloomfield tweets me out, "Hey, congrats!" And I'm like, "Is it over?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "How do you know?" And like, they didn't call me. It was pretty wild, you know. I was just so stuck. I never forget the Red Zone was on in the background for hours. You know, when it ended, it plays the music. It was on. It was on my TV until 10 o'clock, 10:30, awesome. As I stared at my computer, just like. You know, it was awesome. You know, I was frozen, but you know what's crazy, and it's kind of like bugged me out. Like it's like what's going on in my head right now? It's like it's I have the Mamba mentality on my coffee table, and every day like I read a page or two just to get some like, you know, a little motivation, a little Kobe motivation. And one of the things that like really got me was like he said like one time when they won the championship, he didn't feel like celebrating. He shot bad from the free throw line that game and wanted to go work on free throws, right? And in my head, like as the clock is ticking and I'm winning, I'm thinking in my head like, how do I get better next year? You know, like that was already on my mind. So like, and I had to like refocus. My wife was like, "Can you just like enjoy it a little?" Because I told her how I was feeling, and she's like, "What are you nuts?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm just, you know," it was, I was so overwhelmed by that. So yeah, it was crazy, man. It was just a wild ride, you know, but I'm grateful it happened.
I understand. When I had my big win in DFS, it was a wild one. So I totally understand. It's a different experience.
Was it baseball, Bubba?
Yeah, MLB. I hit a $4 entry for $50,000.
Oh, sweet, man.
Yeah, I remember watching the last game and then just kind of like sitting there on the couch staring at the TV. Like, what just happened?
What just happened?
Yeah, what just happened?
God, that's amazing.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, where you're just kind of sitting there like, whoa.
Yeah, it's life-changing, you know, and you just don't know how to react, you know. So That's awesome, bro. It's good to hear that. I never knew that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was about 3-4 years ago, something like that. So yeah, it's pretty sweet. Our buddy Phil Dussault, we've mentioned him a few times. First question he has for you. Last year you won the DC by waiting on closers. Who's one sneaky closer going to have to pick 450 that you think can give you 15 plus saves in 2021?
Ooh, I like this one. Oh man, so this is like, it's funny. When I got into the DC, this was the first like place I went to that I really wanted to break down was closers and like you mentioned, it's a mess. There's free agent that's going to sign. Landscapes will change for sure, but you still love to dig in and find that little nugget. And I wrote down like a couple of guys like Wendell King, Joe Jimenez. I still think can get there, but my biggest target, and I know a lot of people, saying that they just got Rafael Montero, but I still think actually Kendall Graveman's going to be the guy. So Montero is ARB eligible in 2022. So I just don't think that a rebuilding team, I'm looking at that context of, are they going to really drive up this guy's worth right now on a rebuilding team? And so when Graveman went to the pen too, he velocity went up like 2 miles an hour. He had a 3.6 ERA in the pen, short sample size. But if you read, I dug up some Seattle newspaper articles, and the coaches loved him, and he seemed to really enjoy being in the pen. And so that's a stab I already took, and I think it's a stab I'll still take late closer wise.
You're like the second or third person that's told me I need to reevaluate Kendall Graveman. So I'm gonna have to look at that, because I just have horror stories of beforehand. Right. But yeah, so I need to dig back in there, because he has a great price tag right now. Let's put that way. 100%. The other question he asked, and I have a feeling he's part of this answer: who are the all-star guests that are already booked for the Pull Hitter Pod in January and February?
Yeah, Phil knows he's always welcomed on. We always talk about ways to get him on the show. We actually have a pretty cool segment that we're going to start including into like the podcast I do that's going to include Phil, but we're not ready to throw that out there into the world yet. But right now, so I've scheduled some guys for January, because one thing I think I'm just trying to be more a little more structured this year, and looking ahead, obviously something I wasn't used to. So just trying to set a specific schedule and at least just try to attempt to give people like a month. And some people, like, I don't know if people respond like, what, this kid nuts? Like, it's a month and ahead. Like, but I'm just trying to like, keep a nice structured thing. So I reached out to, guys like Matt Modica and Todd Zola. They're going to come on, and Steve Braun, Scott Genstad, Matty Wood. So yeah. And of course, like everyone who I previously had on already, I'd love to get on again as we get closer to, the start of the season. So yeah, that's what nice. I got. Yeah, that's nice. What I
got. Murderer's Row right there. Yeah. Richard Koloski asks, let's play Eno Saris's Would You Rather. So kind of
I love how Eno jumped in. I'm sorry, Bubba. I love how he jumped in last night. Like, was this for me?
So who has the better fantasy season and why? No equivocating, and yes, these players have different skill sets. So just, would you rather corner infield, Yohan Moncada or Paul Goldschmidt?
Goldie.
Javi at middle infield, Javi Baez or McNeil?
Oh, this one I thought this ended up being my closest one, and I'm always a Javi guy. Like a recency bias, taking advantage of him where he's going right now, but I'm going return dollar value. I think what they're asking for, and I'm going McNeil. I think he's going to shine with accumulating stats and an elite hit tool. So I'm going McNeil.
Better team this year too. Outfield, Bryce Harper or Kyle Tucker? I think I know your answer here.
You know what? But in terms of his question for return dollar value, I still think Harper is going to bring back more.
Harper's so underappreciated.
He really is, Bubba. I'm glad you said that, because really you know what? You know what I kind of think he is? I think he's the Mike Trout of the second round. Like how Mike Trout is like, oh, I can't lose a league with Trout. You can't lose with Harper in the second round. So that's my little analogy of him. So I still think in terms of return dollar value, I think he's gonna out pick Tucker by like $1 or $2.
Yeah, I'm with you there, because and Harper brings the floor, but his ceiling can be crazy. We've seen that MVP ceiling.
Right.
Oh man.
Right.
And then for pitcher, well, he already answered this one. Corbin Burns or Plesac?
Burns. It burns.
It burns. The last question we have here is from my buddy Art from Triple Play Fantasy, little cheesecake. How are you addressing unsigned players? Are you following rumors, not letting where they may sign affect your drafting? So we mentioned relievers, but there's also a lot of other players and positions that are unsigned. How is that affecting your drafting of these players?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think it's like a case by case guy. For a guy like Carlos Santana, when I was drafting him early in the year, I wasn't really worried about where he was going to end up. I thought he was just going to have a job no matter where he went. I was kind of trying to look at the first couple guys who signed and seeing the amount they were signed for compared to their WAR, and just kind of see like, Carl Santana still has a job. Like he's still going to be a starter first baseman. So I wasn't so worried about him. But I guess guys like, Osuna, it makes a big difference on when they're going to go. DJ LeMahieu is way off of, just stay away until he signs with the Yankees, basically. But it's tough because, and the one thing I would say about following the news, minding the news, right, is you just got to be careful about what you're actually believing in, because sometimes we just, all right, so that's what we want to be on. That gives us a little leverage, a little edge. But not every manager statement is clear cut, right, Bubba? Like there's nothing that's ever like, oh, this is what I'm saying, so this is true. So you can really kind of just, it's tough. It's a tough evaluation. So I'm if it's a guy who I think is going to land a job in a park, like he's like not a park affected guy, I'm staying in on him at a reasonable price. But if it's a situation where the player, I'm like, I don't know where he's going to sign or where he might play, then I'll be more reluctant to draft him.
I'm 100% with you. That's like Santana, I agreed I was all about because you knew he was going to get a job and his price was a lot different. Ozuna, you still have to pay a premium for him because of what he did last year, and you have no idea where he's going.
Right.
So it's definitely a case-by-case basis. And I guess if I am really concerned, I'm just going to pass, and it might stink. But that's kind of the part about drafting early. You're drafting early, take advantage of some, and you'll get hurt on others. That's just how it's going to work. How do you want to take the approach in the draft? So right now, I probably wait more often than not. But all right, Rob, that'll wrap us up on the episode. Final thoughts, plug away, do all your good stuff.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Bubba. Again, it was amazing just being able to come on the show. Like I said, I really looked up to you since I really started listening to pods, and so I respect the hell out of what you're doing. So yeah, you can find me at Deadpool Hitter on Twitter. I also have a page for the pod at Pull Hitter Pod. I have the Pull Hitter Podcast. Have a website, pullhitter.com. I don't have tons of articles on there, but again, like you mentioned, I really want to, try to hammer that home this year, writing a couple of articles a week. And yeah, that's where you can find me. Hit me up. Let's talk about life. Just want to meet nice people who aren't bags of shit and want to talk about good things in the world. That's it. It's not that hard, Bubba.
No, it's not. It really isn't. It's not hard to be a nice person. Yeah. But check out Rob on Twitter. He's an awesome dude. Awesome dude. Very open to conversation. He's a heck of a fantasy player. So go check out all that good stuff. And thanks for joining me, my friend. We will do it again sometime.
Thank you, Bubba. Yep, absolutely.
Enjoy
New Year's Eve.
Happy New Year's to you and to all listeners.
Rolling out of 2020 with Bubba. This is great.
2021, hopefully better and bigger and better things to come. Absolutely. But this was Bench with Bubba, episode 331 with Rob DiPietro. Catch you guys next time.